on this computer. Okay. Yeah. And we are a go. Okay. So I'd like to talk about why there is so much gloom at the moment, and acknowledge that it comes from a sort of logical place, in that, yeah, based on the way that we see things are going right now, it's not going to get any better. So how can we think of even better? And and I think the same thing happened before. Many times in history, the way people thought, or what the possibilities were in earlier societies, were limited by certain ways of thinking, like monarchy, for example. If everybody believed in kings, like there was one guy who was born to rule over everybody and had to be listened to no matter what, even when he was being immoral, even when he was destroying other people for not his people's purpose, but for his own power, everybody just went along with it. And if you challenged the king, your head was put on a spike, pretty much. So there's no way to imagine that people could live the way that we are living right now in democracy. So if you got in a time machine and went back into time of monarchy and you told them, hey guys, it's just the way our political system works, that we have created out of nothing, with rules that don't make sense. This is what's keeping us down right now. So this is like how previous societies, many civilizations ago, sort of had their societies warped, or the rules of their daily lives warped by bad rules, which everybody agreed to. And more recently, we had an apartheid system. So not a political system, but a legal system that everybody sort of signs up to, because everybody understands the importance of laws. They bring order and security and a code of conduct that everybody can agree to and abide by, and that is a good thing. But if there's just like one line of code, one little thing that says, oh, and by the way, brown people are less valuable than white people, then you're never going to have a harmonious society, because in the law there, you just can't have it. You know, that the brown people will perceive the injustice, and then you'll destabilize the system. So I believe this is the economic system right now is the one that is screwing us up, because like with monarchy and apartheid, the people who wrote the laws were not actually caring about society, and society didn't really think about this. So that's why society suffered. All those millions of people just totally not understanding how they should be, or what the rules should be that govern their lives. So in our economic system today, that is the sort of thing that's holding us back. And if you look at the rules of it, I think you can understand why everybody believes that we have to make profit. And if we maybe drill into if I give you some examples, like just how banks work. In order for banks to, in order for us to have money, we have to go to a bank and ask them for it. And when they so if we want to get a loan, we have to go there and we have to show them that we can produce, if we want a 1 million rand loan, we have to show that we can produce 2 million or 3 million rands worth of goods, and then we have to pay them 2 million rands. So interest, everybody understands interest, right? But if you think about this on a very basic level, if everybody is borrowing 1 million but has to pay back 2 million, the bank has only made 1 million for each of us. It's not actually possible for us to pay 2 million back to them. So this, and you can, it's not me that's saying this. This has been said many times over, and I have a YouTube channel where you can see all these people saying these things. Let me just type that in the chat box. So yeah, you can hear world economists, politicians, American presidential nominees saying exactly the same thing. When you just make interest out of nothing, then yeah, that effectively means we have to work for twice as long as we actually need to, because the bank just created this rule and we don't have an option. So banks are not working for society. Banks are private organizations, just like corporations. And so there's a strange kind of thing happens here, and I have to get very kind of meta. I hope you don't mind, but I envision society of having like at least three major structures. So there's the political, economic, and legal structure. And under the time of monarchy, the king had control of all three things, which sort of makes sense. If you want to run society, you need to be able to create the laws that tell people what they can't do and create the money so that people can do what they should do, like build the schools and the hospitals and the roads and everything else in society. But yeah, the problem with monarchy was that kings didn't care about society. So we changed to democracy. But then when we did that, for some reason, we made the monetary system private. This happened in 1913, a year before World War I. And again, you can look this up. The world didn't used to have to, governments didn't used to have to go to a bank and ask them for a loan. Why they did this it's actually quite really interesting. Trump did exactly the same sort of move when he got tax cuts for the rich passed 2 years ago, but I don't want to go too much into detail there. But basically, when society has to please private people, private corporations, or like when you want a job, you can't go work for the government really, because the government believes that to support the people who work in the government, it has to take out loans so that to pay these people, but that doesn't have to be the case. But we really do think so. So world leaders across the globe haven't sort of perceived that a private economic system where everybody has to please people who don't work for society, who don't care about society, and don't measure the damage to society is a problem. So if you're a president and you want to create schools for your townships, and you go to a bank and or if you just want to do it in your private capacity, you ask a bank for a loan to open schools, they'll say no, there's no profit in it. But if you want to, there's no value in education apparently from the bank's point of view. But we all know that education is the most valuable thing, because it means humans can create all kinds of technologies and understand the world. So this is the most valuable thing, but the banks won't fund it. However, if you want to go to war and steal somebody else's oil or something, or somebody else's money, you make profit. That's completely what the bank wants. They don't care about the value. They care about the profit. If they're destroying society, then but it's just not their society, or there is no punishment for them personally, then it's totally okay. So that's sort of why the world works the way it does right now. I believe people who have the most power cannot be held accountable by society. And we all agree with this, but we shouldn't. And I think a very simple way to get the monetary system back into government or societal control is for any government. And here is have I lost anybody so far? Any questions? Any comments? Okay, so cool. So here is the way in which every government today can very practically return the economic power to themselves. So if they simply created an app to replace the bank function of creating money, if they just created numbers and paid the people of their society to make stuff, to grow food, build homes, clothes, and all of our toys, they pay them for their time in this cryptocurrency, these digital numbers, and then the things that they make through this through the government institutions can be sold back to them for this cryptocurrency. So this way, nobody has to go to a bank and promise them anything, because the government never actually spent anything in setting this up. Today, how it works, if the government wants its people to do something, they have to go to a bank, agree to pay back double whatever numbers the bank gives it. And in order to do that, the government has to tax us privately. And it just doesn't need to work. It doesn't need to happen at all, because the banks don't actually provide any service here. So they are like a middleman, which can totally be cut out with an app. And the people that are working in banks right now, the normal people like you and me, they can just do what they're doing right now, but for their society, for their government banks, I mean. So there never needs to be this debt system. So if you combine, so at the moment, so there's a huge shift in things when some technology goes from private use to public use. And I want to take the example of robots. So when robots work for corporations, they replace people, because the person at the top of that company does not care about the people. He cares about how much profit that company is making so that he can pay back the bank. So everybody's working basically just for some guy at the top to have a larger life. And that guy is completely happy if no humans are empowered by his company. If there are just robots replacing them, awesome. Now, if you had robots replacing your factory workers, your food workers, your anybody in society, you wouldn't actually have a problem with these people being free, because the people whose jobs get replaced now are able to do something else for society. And if it was growing food, it's great. Now there's a machine that grows food better than this person. More of the food can go to the person as well. So keep feeding this person as long as they're doing a job that is valuable in society. So it doesn't have to be profitable. If you just picking up garbage on the street, it's not necessarily profitable, but it is extremely valuable. And the government can totally do this because it can have robots making homes and food and clothes and all of our toys 24/7. And technically it could give it away to us for free, but of course then we would not value anything. So it could just say, as long as you're not a problem to society, we will feed you in these robots will basically feed and home and clothe you. So in order for you to earn cryptocurrency in the future, maybe you just have to pass a number of courses showing that you are solving yourself, number one, becoming educated about in terms of how to be a person, how to be civilized, how to take care of the nature, how how everything works. So that's okay. That's how things look right at the end. But are there any questions about how we get from now to there?
Who pays for the robots?
Okay, so when we say pay for things, what is money? Money is just the medium of exchange. People don't actually want money. People want the things money can buy. So you can just make the money up. So you just need the people who are going to do that thing to be provided with a home, because all the things that are made all around us, everything that is not natural was made by people. And all you need to have people working for you as a society, as a government, is to have homes and food and clothes being provided all the time, because that's all people really need. People will do all the amazing things they do right now, and you don't actually have, there is no real money. Money isn't a real thing. It's really like laws. We can really just change it up. So in this new system, in this new society, the government so why the money that we have right now devalues rapidly, way more rapidly than it should. It's why people need to work, even in America, people need to work more hours to get the same amount of stuff that their parents did, even though we're more productive, like objectively with all our technology. It's because interest is being produced, and when they create too much money and there is no increase in the number of goods and resources in the economy, then the value of the money goes down. So banks will print money as much as they want, whenever they want, but it's not in relation to the resources and goods at all, because they have no control over that. But if you were the government and you're measuring all the resources and the goods that are being made, and you know how many people there are in your society, you can make sure that the amount of money that you have and the amount of is equal to the amount of goods and resources. So basically what a rand buys you now, or a dollar buys you now, or whatever we're going to call the currency, whatever it buys you in year one will buy you the same in year 1000. And you can measure, I mean, you shouldn't, because you should be getting more efficient at doing things. If you're having robots making things, it should be freer, since the supply will be going up. But all that needs to be measured to stop this, or the only thing that needs to be limited, is the sustainability of it. That's the only, like, are there enough resources? And to know if something is sustainable, we have to have scientists working on this problem. So like private companies now are not employing scientists to check how sustainable their activities are, because why would they do that? That would just stop them doing that thing. It doesn't matter that it's for a right reason. It's not good for them privately. But if they were the government, and the government doesn't want to create a society, which is created by people, because people create societies. No society should want to adopt a model of living that is unsustainable. The only reason we're doing it right now is because we're not aware, or it's not because scientists are not being employed to stop companies from destroying the planet, because nobody's measuring externalities. So these are the externalities are the things that private corporations just ignore. But like the death and the destruction of property and other cultures and stuff, they don't calculate all of that, and the loss of earnings that could have come from keeping those people alive. So a society, a government that is trying to make its world a sort of utopia would be the most effective would be the most powerful place in the world. Because think about this. At the moment, we are worried that corporations are too powerful and they have most of the money, because the people at the top have been the most efficient economically, and usually by hook and crook, they would get there. So the people working in these companies, however, are not benefiting from working for these private corporations. The people benefiting from private corporations are the owners, a very small percentage of the population. If you create a society where you say, hey, all the people working in the companies do the same job, but for your society in a way that's sustainable, and you will be rewarded in a way that everybody in your country will have a job. There will be no more homelessness, no more hunger, no more unemployment. Ignorance will be very much going out the window more and more and more each day. We'll have more things made renewable. Scientists will be measuring everything, making sure that the world that we're living in is, highly sustainable and prosperous. I think we can do that. I think if a government creates this, if every government did this, they would move the power from private corporations back to society, because it is society. It's always the people that have the power. It's just that they don't know that, or they get blinded to it, because it's just everybody around us does the same thing, and these are the rules of the game. So we don't question the rules of the game that we're born into. We just want to play. But the world but now we can see the game is not so fun anymore, and it's like Monopoly, and we all know how Monopoly goes. It ends up with a broken home pretty much. And so we should actually just wake up and say, no guys, Monopoly is not the only game we can play. There have been many games before, and we know about them. So how about we just change the one we're playing, and align it to fix what we can clearly see is broken. So how do you guys feel about that kind of world? Could that work for you? Who would like to?
To pick up on the idea of a job guarantee, I'm just wondering how exactly that would work without money. Because normally when we talk about job creation, that's to give people a way to support themselves. So if there's no money, you're not getting paid for the job, and you don't need money anyway, then presumably there will be people who just don't work. How would we deal with them?
Okay, well, so it's not that there's no money. There is money. So it's like we don't, when we remove monarchy, we didn't remove politics. We still have politics. It's just a slightly better version. So now with money, it's just that the previous makers of the money, just like with Apartheid, the previous makers of the law were not caring about society. All Nelson had to do was just make new laws, not eliminate laws. I'm just saying make new money with new rules. So it might work where everybody in the society gets a Facebook app, which tells you what the needs of your people are. So like how many mouths to feed, how many calories need to be grown, and how many farmers there are. So based on supply and demand, the pay for a farmer is X. If we get robots that do that job, okay, in 6 months' time, your job is not going to be paying you as much anymore because we don't need you. So here are the next needs of society that you can be trained. We will offer you training for, because we want you to have a job, obviously. So it's like a game where you play, you see the skill tree, you see the points that you can earn by being in that role, and you just decide for yourself how to get where you want to go. And the value that you contribute to society is then just rewarded in this cryptocurrency, which works just like money. Tash, would you like to ask?
Hey, it's me, Odon.
Oh, hi.
That partially answers sort of the query that I had is you sort of has money as a dual function at the moment of being both this enabling sort of mediator. So it enables me to store the value that I've created theoretically and use it somewhere else. Still having money, I guess you still retain that function of money. The other function I see that money has is it's a motivating factor. And maybe that's some of the shift that needs to happen, is that some of the motivation, which is currently situated within money and which is arguably a very large part of the problem, needs to be shifted somewhere else. And actually with the answer that you gave now sort of, I guess, answers that to a certain extent as well. As your motivating factor then becomes, what can I contribute to society? And also probably, what would I enjoy to do? So maybe farming is a more enjoyable activity and I earn less currency for that. And I assume there's some sort of, I guess, socialist element which sort of distributes, so that there isn't these massive discrepancies between perceivably high value and low value jobs. But that maybe I wouldn't choose to do accounting because that's not enjoyable to me. I'd rather do farming. But there are so many more people doing farming, so you earn less. But I guess then how does one balance out those sort of motivating factors in this new system?
Right. So great points there, Odon. So yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. The system is sort of supposed to be a remaking, a modernizing of the idea of social capital, where if you lived in a village, you didn't need money because people would remember all the things that you did. So your brownie points, you know, in that kind of saying. So like you need, so the problem is when you globalize everybody, you go to a new village, nobody recognizes your face anymore. So they don't know your brownie point score. So you just need to have that score to take with you. So that's basically what money is supposed to be, I think, in a harmonious society. And that society should then take great care to consider what it values as important. And morality has always got to be there. I mean, oh, sorry, that's a big question, but a big thing. But yeah, as long as everything is sustainable and you are really measuring the outcomes, are they positive or negative? Yeah, you should be able to determine which jobs are like incentivized, you know. Yeah, so you incentivize people. So like, for example, so if, for example, unfortunately, maybe if robots do one day take over, well, make farming unnecessary, and then farming could be you could get the same pay as a person who picks up rubbish on the street. So it doesn't matter that you're not doing that job. You get the same reward if you want. I mean, the same economic reward. There's no going down. It's just that more jobs that are neglected now because they're not profitable will get attention. So caring for the elderly, you know, all of these things will be empowered by a community or a society, hopefully, that remembers what certain basic rules of humanity are. Socialism is another thing you mentioned there. And yeah, but socialism for me is a kind of, okay, I don't want to get too deep into what capitalism and communism are, but the way I see it, communism is a game that said like everybody gets the same amount no matter what your job is. And the thing is, if a job is really difficult, not many people can do it. Society should actually reward that kind of job to incentivize more people to go there. So if you just eliminate, like you give everybody exactly the same, then the tough jobs are not going to get done, which is unfortunately bad for society. So forcing equality is not a good thing. Capitalism is like letting inequality run rampant. And that is also bad for all we know, wealth inequality, wealth gap, all the rest of it. But socialism, in the way I think of it, it's like sort of how a family works. The people at the top sort of raise the floor for the people at the bottom so that everybody can keep going higher. And yeah, people can still be incentivized to do the tougher jobs that maybe other people don't want to do, but are important. I hope that answers your question, Odon. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad that you got to socialism at the end there, because I was sort of wondering, I guess, in essence, what's the difference here in socialism, and I guess it's sort of maybe a revamping of a sort of a similar backbone of that system, that you do have a certain level of quality, but that it's capped so that people can decide for themselves how motivated they are to be at either end of the spectrum. And I guess the difficult part is how far apart do you set those two ends of the spectrum?
Yeah.
And how do you, which rules mediate the sort of supply and demand? And I guess that's kind of, in a cryptocurrency sense, which you've been touching on, is sort of which rules do you bake into the system where it's that it stays self-managing, but I guess you still want it to be to a certain extent flexible to accommodate reality, which is always changing.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. So the cryptocurrency, obviously, it has the main function is just to keep like sort of parity between amount of resources and to basically keep prices the same. That I think is going to be the focus of cryptocurrency. But yeah, it's a very complicated conversation that But yeah, socialism, I think, is the natural sort of economic model for a government-based economy to use, because presumably it's for society. Socialism doesn't, it focuses on social quality or society, you know, society. Maybe we can call it societalism. So making sure that, yeah, everybody in society is sort of moving along nicely. And yeah, that's basically the idea, because you want a system that has everybody saying, I want to go live there, or I want to work in this system, because in a way that's sort of power, because you get everybody to do things that in your way, because it's the right way to do things. Then you have less of, you know, the people who want to cause a problem, who are still living in sort of backwards ways of thinking, or yeah, living in the zero-sum thinking of the current government systems where we still go to war and stuff like that. That's not supposed to be something that you can think of. But anyway, Cassie, please go ahead.
Okay, you're probably still going to touch on that, but who makes these new rules now that you're supposed to live by? Theoretically, there will be a government that has its people's best interests at heart. We still haven't had one of those, as far as I know. So who gets to make these new rules and decide what is more valuable and what is not valuable, and who sets the prices and runs the whole system, basically?
Right. So there are different models of government in the world where things have been objectively measured, like how educated are these people, how easy is it for them to get that education, how many social problems are there, how much wealth inequality are there. If you look at all of these models, you tend to find the patterns of harmony. How can I say, like okay, so there was one guy, there's another TED talk you can watch where somebody looked at the top 10 countries in terms of GDP per capita, so the richest countries. So we sort of work on this model where we think that the top GDP per capita countries have the best lifestyles, but it's not. If you actually measure all those things that I just said, the richest country has like the most social problems. The next one, which is a socialist country, Norway, is the next richest GDP per capita, has the least amount of problems. And so like, what is going on here? When you compared GDP per capita to quality of life, there was no correlation. But when they looked at not GDP per capita, but the amount of inequality in the system. So America, out of the top 10 countries, America is the most unequal. So that's why it has the most problems. And then the next unequal one was next on the line, and it was a straight curve. So it's almost like proving with science that GDP per capita doesn't equal happiness or social well-being. It's inequality. How much inequality in your society do you have? It's so you almost don't need a person to tell you. There are objective measures, and if you just pay attention to all of them, I mean, many scientists are working in so many areas, and in this day and age where you can, if you watch a lot of TED Talks and stuff, you see so much overlap in between what different people are saying, and that you actually see that there are patterns that make it logical for how to actually structure, I guess, this cat, how we should live. You know, like history teaches us these things, and it's really just education. So how to get the people to create the right rules is to get them to know all of the things that all of these scientists have said and put on graphs and things like that. And so, because again, and the way to get people, it is a bit like a chicken and an egg sort of situation, because you have to get people educated to do this, but you have to get the economy working first. And it's kind of like a socialist thing where the people at the top, like Chris Hedges, who knows what's up, has to be able to actually tell people, and people have to listen to what they're saying, because once you get it, it's not like you really have to be convinced. You can sort of, see like this is just the right way to do things. Like we've just missed, our morality has just completely been ignored, and that's sort of the thing that's been lacking. And I don't know, if you can educate people in morality, that's one thing, but just basically, how does society work? Why should you, like when you leave university, why shouldn't you have a job which allows you to contribute whatever you can do, which clearly you're a competent, amazing person. There's just no way for you to actually slide into the government system. So once you have those people sliding in, then you can have these smart decisions being made, and then also consulted at one of our people's assemblies that us as Extinction Rebellion are trying to set up. So that can be another way in which
I think education is overrated.
Sorry?
When it comes to David, I'm just thinking, I think education in that manner is a bit overrated. Personally, if you are not one of those people who think the indigenous people have all the answers and stuff, but then you're looking at sort of uneducated people who are actually not ruining their world and their societies. So, and the minute that the Western world gets involved, everything goes to hell. So education from that point of view, you know, people have to learn what they have to learn. You can't decide. It's like giving someone a curriculum and saying, this is what you need to know. And they teach them a whole lot of nonsense and say that's how the world works. So yeah, I don't know how you get around.
So this is exactly what we were talking about before the meeting, actually. So yeah, last night, there's always a dark aspect of every piece of technology that people create. So language, or education, it has two sides. Education can be, what is it? It's quite simply, in my definition, the passing of knowledge from one human to another. Now, sometimes the knowledge coming out of a person's mouth is actually indoctrination, which is the negative aspect of education. And how do you tell between good education and bad education? Well, it's usually based on what is the bad education based on. Like, are there objective facts that lead people to their conclusions, or is it really just believe me what I say about this because we've said it like this for 1,000 years or something like that? Knowing, if you are like, when you get to, if you like get to the philosophy level and you study ontology or epistemology, like, how do you know what is knowledge, what is knowing, how do you measure it? Knowing this is important for actually understanding the nature of reality. And so that's education in itself. You know, it's a pure kind of education, and you don't need actually a book to tell you that. If you really are just paying attention, observing really closely, you don't need to, I don't need to explain to you why knowing is, yeah, I think you just get it, sort of like objective things people just sort of get. But yeah, so education, you've got to ask yourself, the questions of your society. What are you educating? What are you basing your education on? Is it just the old system, or what are we trying to create in our schools? Are we trying to create robots who are just obedient factory workers? Or are we trying to create human beings who can recreate society at will, based, who have a free mind, understanding what they are individually as an animal, and also who they are in their society as a civilized person, and what the contracts are supposed to be and how they can change themselves. It is a lot of stuff to know, but when they're in schools, knowing these things, at least they're not on the streets causing problems. You know, there's a lot of things to pick up, but there's no technology that can't be abused, but education is one of the most powerful ones. Can't rob ourselves of that. Please go ahead, Andrew. Andrew, you're on mute.
Sorry, my mouse is hovering over the chat thing. It gets me every time. I was wondering, I mean, it seems to me like different experts could have different opinions in terms of what measures we use. I I mean, the more education you tend to have in something, it's kind of like the experience. The more you learn, the less you know. So often higher education doesn't lead people all toward the same correct conclusion. It leads people to a deeper understanding of debates and disagreements which may never be solved but are still worth discussing. So say all the experts disagree on how we should measure things. Even though each of those particular measures, once adopted, is objective, actually you still have a subjective decision to be made between which experts' suggestions we go with. So I think Cassie's question can be rephrased as, I mean, you know, you can put that off, but eventually you get to a subjective decision, and who makes that? And do they then have the right to enforce that on everyone else?
Right. Oh, so yeah. So yeah, this is basically a question of democracy, really, because it should be the people in the societies holding their leaders to account for their decisions. And if their decisions are clearly bad for society, then, you know, the people in that society are probably not educated enough in terms of what the right way to do things is. And so, like, you have to help them understand that, you know, that's sort of the thing. Like our society is worse when we have less educated people around us, more ignorant ones. And when they're more ignorant, they don't know what's good or bad, really. Like if a leader is lying to them, they don't care. They think it's fine. It's like, he looks like me, I should vote based on who looks like me or makes me feel the best, not based on what the effect on my society is going to be, which is really stupid. And I think if you look at, like, I didn't want to mention, but the American situation, it's, you can see how corporate dynamics have sort of warped that entire civilization, you know, because their schools just are not funded by their government. Their society doesn't work that way. It is very private. So they can warp their education. They can warp the way that their culture to love going to war the whole time, because, you know, that's just how that society works. So the problem of democracy is that you need people who know what's good and how to make good decisions. So you can only get that once you've got an economy or a country where there's full access to education for everybody. You know, like in a country where you don't have that, like ours, or good quality education at least, then you're going to have a voting populace, which is going to be dragging the population down all the time. If you get if everybody can attain if you can get everybody to like university level as voters, I think you lose a lot of the problems, you know, like voting for corrupt leaders, because you understand when your leader is lying to you and you're analyzing what they're saying and you've seen that they're stealing money, then you won't vote them into power for a second term, for example. That's like, why would you do that if you know what they're doing? You don't know what they're doing. That's why you do that, you know, so like that's how I see things. Yeah, that's what I see the conflict as being and how to resolve it. I mean, yeah. So yeah, like, how do you decide what's good and best? You measure. You really ask the person, like, what is the thing that you're trying to do? Like, should we kill babies or should we go to war? Case by case, everybody has got to be able to deal with it. Like, really, there is no standard answer for what is good or best. It requires that everybody participates in the discussion and, you know, evaluates things critically and independently. And how to know what to look at and how to evaluate things really is a process that requires a lot of training and
Sorry,
work. So I just wanted to ask whether you've put everything down, because while I applaud your confidence in your solution, I'm really battling that I haven't heard anything new that I haven't been seeing by lots of people. And the reality is that implementing it is just not a possibility, because the world is as it is for a variety of reasons. So I was wondering whether you've put anything down in writing to better, because I'm not a fan of YouTube, so I'm not going to watch a lot of stuff. I've watched and read a lot around these things in the past. Is there something that you can share with us?
Yeah, so sorry, misspelled the website there the first time. I've got that website there where you can read a little bit more about into how that kind of world would work. And so basically, I get what you mean. It's nice ideas, but I think the way to get the idea actually implemented is to really just get people to understand, as is pretty clear, I think, is that the system doesn't work for them. Our societies don't work for us. We know this. We can't see how it's going to get any better. So let's change things the way we should. We can do it virtually overnight. We solve most of society's problems: unemployment, homelessness, crime, most crime, taxes. We achieve free education, free healthcare. If you've got your nurses and your teachers living in these robot-built homes, and scientists and engineers making them out of solar panels, which can also power an electric fleet of Ubers, driverless Ubers, which our mechanics are making because they're educated to do that, or we're training people to do these things. We can live in a new world where, like, we go to a township and say, we're going to demolish your shacks, put you up in these high-rise, completely self-sustaining buildings, which are going to be on top of your shopping centers and your sports rooms and music rooms and all the rest of it. And where your township used to be, all those shacks used to be, you can use that land for farming now. And your food comes directly to you. You don't need a truck. You don't need drivers. The society, the people living in that residential skyscraper work for themselves. They teach themselves, and they can be connected by electric public transport, which really is highly sustainable. It removes traffic. It stops basically all the things that we think we need to have right now, where people have to have a piece of land. It's basically like going from, did you watch the Avengers movies? Okay. Anyway, in that movie, the bad guy, the major bad guy, wants to kill half of life on the planet because he doesn't see a way that, because there are not enough resources to sustain so many life forms. So his idea is to kill half of life in the universe. I'm saying that if every life form in the universe can use just 10% of what it does today, which it can by technology and education, then we don't have to destroy any life. We actually have 5 times more room for people, but we're not going to get there, because once you tend to get civilized, you don't really need that many children, because you understand it's about quality, not quantity, and stuff like that. So things change when we see how things could be different, I think. And I hope that could inspire people to just go out on the street and say, hey, government, you could totally create all the money and jobs overnight. You don't even have to lose your jobs. Just do it for us. And then we will keep you in power for the next however many terms you are capable of doing that for.
Yeah, on your website, I'm battling to find something that it looks like a document that I can read, but
go to the Freedom Charter.
I may be weird that I like to read, but I would just suggest that you think about a transition plan, because even though there are a lot of great ideas, to get society now to change is rather a big obstacle to any change happening. So I would just want to say that as a parting thought, but I need to leave now. So thank you very much, and keep your energy going.
There is something called the Freedom Charter on the website, which is a lot more text for you to read on. But yeah, thank you very much for your encouragement. Yeah, I look forward to talking about it later. Ciao for now. Okay. Right. So, oh yeah. Yeah, so hey Cassie, yes, what's up Cassie?
I think for me, the problem with this so far, I can see it working as a solution. There's a lot of solutions to this thing, but the bit that bothers me still is who gets to decide?
So
Who
yeah,
gets to decide that it's best for people to live in high rises, have no, instead of living in the shack kind of thing. Most rational, educated, whatever people might think that's a good solution, but it sounds a little bit like this is going to be a dictatorship, and who is going to be the people who are going to make these new rules? I think you and I don't watch the same science fiction movies, and I don't like yours at all, with
What?
all the robots and all of these rules.
Okay, so the thing is, science fiction movies exactly are made. The purpose of a movie is not to convey reality. So scientists in movies are the opposite of what they are in reality. Come on, they intentionally. It's like yeah, as I said earlier, the robots don't have limbic systems. They don't have a reptilian brain. They're not gonna go aggressive on us like we would. Like if the ones of us who use just pure rational thinking don't come to the conclusion that it's moral or it's right to kill a human being that's not a threat to you. That's just stupid, and yeah, really immoral. So it's like if you set the rule for a computer, don't hurt any people, it's really not going to hurt any people. People might get hurt by it and not doing something, but yeah, that's the problem of the coding. It's so anyway, getting to the problem of democracy. This is the eternal problem, because who gets to say the rules? Who gets to make the rules that everybody lives by? In a society that functions, everybody should agree with the guy on the top, right? But of course, that's not practical. So we're now forming these, like, I don't know, different kinds of democracy. What's this? I don't know. I can't remember what kind of democracy it is, but like a meritocracy, basically. So maybe if you have, instead of having one vote, if you rise to the ranks of whatever, you get PhDs and masters and in a certain field, and maybe our voting system in the future could work such that the more qualified you are in a field, the more your vote counts. But this is open to anybody. So anybody who wants to go there. So and also, instead of having a democracy where we just vote for one guy to be in charge of everything, why not have one guy in charge of economics, one guy in charge of I don't know, culture or something. We vote for these people each year. We can vote for a different one, and everybody gets to play more of a part in this. Maybe we make reality TV where people get to see who these people are in much more depth and choose them as a leader. There's so many ways in which we can make people better voters, but it comes from having the resources to do that, not by keeping the power in the hands of centralized people who don't care for society, because then society don't even question. Like at the moment, no society functions because it's been set up this way that we don't care, or it's like we don't have the right.
That's not because do we just not care, or we're not educated? It sounds to me like you're saying we're not educated enough.
We don't care because we're not educated. We think the other menial things we do to earn some money at the end of the month is the most important thing you can do with your life, whereas instead of just understanding what is going on, when clearly that is the most important thing, and people don't understand what's going on. That's why they do all these things, and the only way to get that is education. And yeah, a good education is really usually presents facts and figures, and yes, you can dispute it, and it is important for us to go through this process. This is actually an important thing. This is the sharpening process. Why do you think that? You must give reasons for your opinion, and yeah, this is how people get better. This is the process. Debating. Come on.
I don't agree. I'm sorry. This sounds. I don't know. I will have to give it some more thought, but just off the cuff, I don't like it at all.
Okay,
saying that people have more, like you were saying, maybe people get a better, more votes, basically because you're more educated, or
okay,
I don't know. I just don't. It's a gut feel for me that it just sounds like a bad idea.
So, I mean, like, who would you want voting for like the economics? People who don't really understand economics, who maybe like just are fed a bag of rice by their leader and then get votes by the millions because there are more poor people than there are educated people. Like that's, there's got to be a way to counter that manipulability. You know, like we've seen that happen before, and there's no system that is perfect, really. It's never going to happen. So don't look for that. Just look for better. You can always do better. And if better is so easily achievable, then let's start here and then work our way closer to perfection. Like, let's just get rid of all the unemployment and poverty. Let's deal with that. And then we can see how, okay, making people calmer lowers the amount of crime in my country. And when people start to understand science, they know how to like the importance of objectivity, reality, not just what people say. You put them through more of these things where they have to like look at history, look at, make them do things that are similar to what they've done, to what has been done in history. You know, just when the majority. Sorry?
Sorry, it sounds like playing Sims with the whole population, you know.
Well, it is. That's what societal design is. Don't you want the people in your society to get better? Like in terms of not creating any negative outcomes, like not raping, not killing, not doing things because their culture tells them to, or their religion tells them to, because they can see, oh, this is actually, it doesn't make sense if this thing tells me this because it doesn't work with my logic or what I've been, the way things are supposed to work. You know, the only way you can make people break out of these fantasies is by teaching them how to really look at knowledge, look at the world, how to observe things rationally. And that's the beauty of where we are right now. The education system has its flaws, but we never, before World War I, basically nationalized education wasn't a thing. Can you imagine trying to organize something like this when people can't even read? You know, like we are way ahead now. We can do this. We can totally get across to everybody how society works now. It's possible. And especially with this going on, the whole world can hear what you have to say and then test it. You know, like if you can't find a problem with it, then what's wrong? Like, sure, it's not perfect and nothing is going to be, but why wouldn't you? What you have is way worse. Why not move it up? So Andrew, your hand is still up?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you've kind of thought about money, but not so much other forms of power. For example, if you make things about education, there's already all kinds of stuff wrong with education. It's skewed in all sorts of ways, and not just in that it's not accessible to some people, but that things like, for example, someone who grew up poor and didn't have decent nutrition is not going to have the same cognitive function as someone else who did. Teachers just naturally tend to kind of enforce their own cultures or be biased in favor of their own cultures. People are evaluated in terms of their own cultures, their looks. I mean, how good looking you are, your height, your gender, how you dress, all of these things have an impact on how you will be assessed by people. And I'm sure you know, even as an English teacher yourself, I mean, what do you do when a student kind of gets creative and makes up a new Shakespeare style phrase? Do you say, sorry, 0 marks because your grammar's wrong? Or do you say, sorry, 100%, that's great. You're actually getting quite advanced, and it's wonderful to see you showing your own creativity through the language. You're not going to get 100% of teachers to agree on that. So at the same time, it seems like you're leaving subjective decisions in the hands of a few people, whichever way you go. So I'm wondering if perhaps you've looked at other kind of models, other sort of systems or possibilities for socialist societies, focusing more on the political elements. So like civil municipalism, which they're using in Rojava in Syria at the moment and is working fairly well. Anarcho-syndicalism, which was proposed quite a while ago, or even things that go into less depth, like Kate Raworth's donut economics. I think maybe going into that sort of thing and asking yourself, how do these differ from my proposal? Are there things that I could learn from these, and so on and so forth. Also, just to be interacting with the kind of political theory that is already established and that you know, people already have as a frame of reference. I think your idea of representative democracy could be a little bit more creative in terms of choosing a few people to give power to and then holding them accountable. Obviously, the way we're doing it now doesn't work. So there needs to be a drastic sort of devolution of power down to lower levels. It still seemed to me like you're thinking in a way that's very hierarchical, and I'm sure there are different kinds of democracy, a more kind of grassroots bottom-up systems than the representative electoral democracy that we have now. And that don't create hierarchies, where the person at the top of the hierarchy is an educator or a priest or a politician or a scientist or an economist or whomever else. I think there might be an inherent problem in that sort of unnecessary hierarchical relationship.
Yeah, it's funny how all the things you mentioned there require that people be very educated so that they can implement in anarcho-syndicalism. And to be a better teacher, you need to be better educated, really, because yeah, if you don't understand, if your culture, to get personal here for myself, I am a colored. I'm not sure if this comes across very clearly, but I can put it on if I smart to, but I let go of my culture when it gets in the way, because it's like, if you want to be a teacher in Hong Kong, then it gets in the way, objectively speaking. All the Maybrews have to be set aside. So if you are aware of what your culture is, and that it is a set of rules that people make up, like all the other things I just said, and that it can be wrong, push you in the wrong way, and when you measure, and you can even determine that it is wrong when you measure objectively what you're trying to accomplish here. So yeah, if your culture says women are less important and nature goes against that, then you look at the objective reality. Nature saying no, they're not less, they're the same, just different. So you like, once you're educated enough, you can make that determination. So a teacher that is saying that is teaching in the wrong way needs more training, which is more education, more experience to get better. So education is always the answer, guys. And yeah, the anarcho-syndicalism that you mentioned earlier, yeah, I think I was kind of, unless I'm completely misunderstanding it, when I said like, maybe we could get different people to vote for different aspects of the society. So like economic, one guy's the economic leader, one guy's the political leader, one guy's maybe the legal or law enforcement leader or something. And each person that votes for them can be part of a council or something. So you can get your syndicate to raise the people in, so that they form their own sort of hierarchies, which they are all justified by the competency, like a meritocracy. Meritocracy is also a kind of hierarchy, and you can't get away from hierarchies because people are not built the same way. They have roles to play that they can be better in. That's just sort of how nature works. So you can't get away from any hierarchy. You always got to have the best people making the decisions, and everybody has got to choose the right leaders. If they choose the wrong leaders, then yes, they go into shit. So it's all about educating your voters in terms of what is good, what is bad. So and it is up to that society to sort of like click onto it. So yeah, I think it starts with really getting all the things going, because all the things, all like the problems that I think can be identified are like long-term problems. Yes, sure, that's at the end, but how about the immediate problems that like there's no other way to get around these immediate problems? And also us as Extinction Rebellion are sort of made for this kind of thing, getting a message across loudly, attractively, virally, to get people to change the way their governments work. I mean, like, this sort of seems to be the thing that we want, and it doesn't solve everything, but you know, the citizens' assemblies are there and we are pushing it. Presumably we want this sort of participative democracy and people to engage in how their society works. Like, it's a home run, I think. So yeah. What do you, yeah. So that
Anarcho-syndicalism, as I understand it, is where basically syndicates of trade unions decide what to do with the means of production via bottom-up participation from the factory floor. So basically, I'm sorry to say it, your uneducated workers making decisions on how we use our resources. But I think you and I have some fundamental differences in terms of how we see human behavior. I mean, I'm totally anti-meritocracy. That's something that I think has been a trick that's been used by the powerful for a while. And it's sort of because who decides what's merit? There is no objective way. You can educate someone as much as you like, and they're not necessarily all going to come to the same conclusion. Also, I tend to disagree about hierarchy. So there are various things I don't think we're going to come to agreement on here, but it was very interesting hearing your ideas.
Cheers. But yeah, so again, this the meritocracy, again, it's a technology, a way, a thing that we want to do. It can be abused. It has been abused. I'm not going to say that it cannot be abused. Like, again, like, people can always come up with the worst case scenario, because there always is a worst case scenario, but like, I don't really think that it's likely to happen. So like, meritocracy sort of works on basic principles of, you want the best guy to do the job. Like, I think it's a basic principle. You know, in any community, any culture can figure this out. Any baby can figure it out. But yeah,
sorry, let me jump in, because I've majored in HR, I've taught HR, I've written study guides on HR. It's a huge thing, selecting the right person for the right job. People think they're fantastic at it, and they're all flipping crap. You have to teach specific skills to try and help people to actually measure things properly.
Exactly.
And I'm sure you've noticed it with outcomes-based education. You end up giving someone a grade and you think, no, the student actually deserves a lot more than this, but I've used the system because it has to be standardized, it has to be objective, and so on. It's not obvious. It's not something that a baby can do. It's something that a baby might think they can do, because so does the big fat businessman. Everyone thinks they can do it until you actually take an objective look at how people perform after the selection has been made, and everyone is doing it all wrong.
So you're kind of proving my point, Andrew. You're educated enough to do this and determine why all the other choices are wrong based on objective reasons that anybody can understand. So you're kind of proving that education makes things much more efficient and makes people capable of doing things in a way that they can say, with supporting evidence, why they're more likely to be correct than someone else. Don't you think?
Yeah, but these things are also, I mean, the skills that you train people in are subjective decisions are made around those. So again, it's just kicking the can down the road a little bit, because I can say, look, here are the problems, but it'll be totally subjective, the solutions that I think are most important, as opposed to what someone else will work better. It always comes back to something subjective.
No.
And I think that's kind of good. Otherwise, we would reach the end of knowledge, and our beliefs would never change. I think that'd be a bit boring, and it also kind of seems not to be the case.
Right. Yeah. So like, no, I get your point. So yes, whatever thing a person is going to put forward is probably going to come from some subjective point of view. But when we have meetings, like forums, when we put all our ideas out on the table, these ideas sort of merge into something that's sort of amorphous and belongs sort of to the community. And the ones that get lifted up are usually going to be like, they'll pick apart your idea and compare it to somebody else's idea, and based on certain criteria, judge which one is best. And yeah, if everybody is really trained in like identifying morality, then, for example, that will make those decisions probably safer or better for their community. If that community doesn't care about morality, because yeah, their education is different or incomplete, then there are going to be atrocities. So I get that it's going to be subjective things and different opinions being put forward all the time, but the ability to cut through the disagreements, the conflict, and come up with a resolution which is favorable to everybody is how I think we're supposed to be living our lives. So, and it's not natural for us to do this though, but if we train ourselves thinking about, how anything's going to get done, I think everybody will sort of come to this way of being, because if they want to be at the table, this is what they've got to be, or what they've got to be thinking about and doing. So, yeah, cheers. Hi, Cassie, please jump in.
So if you then had to say this is the way forward now, what would you be pushing for? What would you be asking? Who would you be asking, and what would you be asking them to change to your way of your new economy? Who would it be asked of? The people, the government, the corporate?
So get the people to post this video, for example, on the social media of their governments or political parties, and start a sort of a conversation, global, national, whatever, and tell their governments to create their own cryptocurrency for their free economy, to eliminate all those things like the poverty, the homelessness, crime, the taxes, and install free education and healthcare. I think everybody wants all of those things. And since it can be done literally overnight, virtually overnight, and nobody really technically has to lose a job, except the only ones losing anything are the ones that pretty much have everything at the moment. So they'll be fine. It's just so we only have the 0.0001% of the planet to be afraid of. But when the money has no power over us, then it won't be something scary. So get the governments to feed their societies and give everybody a place, and stop destroying the world, and create a world in which nobody has to fear like a global pandemic, because we've got robots making stuff for us all the time. And if we have to chill out for a while, doesn't matter about house payments, because this is clearly a special case. So we can just pause all of the societal matrix stuff that we make up, just stay alive, stay healthy, and then resume normal life after that without any anxiety. Like, it's a strong message, don't you think?
That's assuming that our current government, or anyone's current government, would go for that. It would assume that they have the country's citizens' best interests at heart, which they clearly don't.
Right.
So we need a new government.
But but then already having this video, so the next part of that sentence could be, if they don't set up this free economy, set it up yourselves, create your own political party, get somebody else to do this, because this is it's an idea. It's an open source, brilliant idea, which anybody can just sort of accept and switch on. It's really just a mental switch, like monarchy to democracy, or apartheid to justice. It's just, change the way you think about something deep, but it's not.
I think people would like to see it working first. I think they would like to see it at least that someone's trialed it and that it can work instead of just adopting it.
Well, I mean,
straight
yeah.
away, because it sounds like a good idea.
So like socialist countries are a really good model to work on. Yeah, they unfortunately, well, Norway unfortunately is built on oil, but it doesn't have to be. This is the thing, like you can get, they really don't have to have oil in order to make homes. You just need the people and the materials, with very little oil of which is needed. So yeah, if you're driving around electrically and or using trains or whatever, using water, then yeah, you can do all of these things. They're like, again, like this video can attach to all the links to all the different technologies that your society, that things that people and countries are already using. Like, I don't know, have you ever seen that mirrors arranged in a circle around just one point which has salt in it? So it looks like a satellite dish, basically, in Kimberley. It's a solar thermal power plant. So basically what that thing is doing is just concentrating the sun's light onto a point, melting salt, and the heat is used to turn water into steam, which turns turbines, which makes electricity like today. It's just directly heat to electricity. Like, it's so simple, it's so clean. Like, what does it take to do this? And the one in the Redstone one powers like homes for 1 million people, and it's the size, half the size of Cape Town Airport. So if we've got 4 of those, with like 2 more airports spaces with these satellite dishes, basically, then we've got clean energy, and we don't need ESCOM whatsoever. And all you need, and the scientists just need homes and food, and they'll keep doing whatever they need to keep doing to keep energy coming freely. Like, it's going to change the way things work. Like, we won't need the oil, we won't need the other things because today the reason why we are not investing in renewables, as we know, is Gwede and all of this other ilk who really think that the only way to get money is to be the slaves of the corporations, take the money from them. They'd rather take the checks rather than write the checks themselves, because they don't really understand that they could do this. But yeah, so the only way to get your government and your country to work properly is if you're all educated and moving to renewable energies and not destroying the planet and yourselves. And then the way you do this is stand in the street, or non-violent direct actions. It can work so quickly.
I am not making a sign that says we want robots. I will not.
I want moral robots.
I don't know. Hey, the books that I've been reading about the threats to the world, people, when they talk about climate change, and then always in a little bit right at the end, they say, keep an eye on AI. So, when you start talking robots and you start talking AI, I get very uncomfortable, because, you just need a few people to put in the wrong code. And then, I'm not really particularly bothered about it. I'm exaggerating a bit, but.
No, but there's a thing. I would never, even though I think a computer could think, can outthink any human being, I would never put them at the top of the system. The person at the top always has to have literally skin in the game. They have to be able to lose something that they don't want to. A robot overlord that cannot be interacted with, no, that's stupid. Obviously, you would have a human controlling a robot, maybe controlling AI, but if something's going wrong, that society should be capable of detecting that if they are educated enough and have a sort of structure where there are enough people making account of where is all the money going here and there. At the moment, we don't have anybody taking account of these, because who's going to pay their salaries that allows them to pay the banks the incredible interest they need for their homes? Like, no, just we have some people making some homes and food for these people, and all they need to do for their job is just get some information, which travels freely. You can have strong institutions if you have the right people in the right places, but you have to also you have to set them up properly, and there is enough knowledge there are enough organizational psychologists to tell you that there is a right and a wrong way to set things up, and based on what, and if you evaluate it in real time, you can always blah 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 blah, but it takes you energy and attention and going through the process of evaluating blah blah blah. But yeah, you need people who can do that everywhere all the time. So give more people the opportunity, make it accessible to everybody, let everybody have a chance at prosperity. That's the game that we want to play. The only limitation is yourself, basically. But yeah, so yeah.
I think that's one thing that XR also says with climate change. There are solutions. We all know what the solutions are. Well, all the clever people, all the scientists. So it's not a matter of not knowing how to fix things. It's just that there's no will to fix things. And I think it's the same with the economic system. The people who are currently benefiting from it, all the elites and the people with the money, have no reason for wanting to change this. And that's what we're up against. So it's not that we don't know, and you can educate people and people can decide this is the best thing, the best way of going ahead, but you got to break the structure. So you need that you still need that revolution of pushing the people in power out, so that you can make the things happen, so that we can implement the solutions. But that's the hard part. It seems to me that you're saying that if people are just educated enough, or if people know what the problem is, they will be inclined to fix it, or they'll push for fixing it. But I don't know if it's that simple.
Well, I mean, like the monarchy and Apartheid, they show you, like, if people just don't question, if they're not educated as to what a leader is supposed to be doing, then they'll choose the wrong leader, or they'll allow somebody who has no interest in them to rule over their lives by the bajillions. It's disgusting that humans have been this stupid for so long. But once somebody sort of thought, no, let's challenge this based on all the things that you're saying, I'm not seeing a correlation between good and this stuff that's coming out of your system. So when you ask the question, okay, then there is, when you see the fault, when you see that it's really just a fake wall, really just something that you perceived that was the problem, then you can fix it really quickly. But it really takes people a long time if they've imagined this thing to be godlike in their world. Like Andrew was talking about culture earlier. Yeah, people think of their culture as being true, or all controlling over them, because they don't realize that it was just a lot of people a long time who made up some rules, which usually worked out, but at the time, maybe because everybody else was so violent, nobody was educated enough to know the golden rule, which makes you non-violent. Once people really take on board the message of the golden rule, for example, then governments won't be looking into AI for drone strikes. But the kind of morality that we have in the world right now allows for slavery and homophobia and misogyny, because people are not educated enough to understand what the golden rule really means, and that it is objective morality sort of encased in one sentence. Because there are these conflicting rules which we've told ourselves are correct. So how is it possible to know that the rules that we are following are not correct? Yes. How? People that are paying attention, you guys, us, we notice things. Why do we notice things? Because we're paying more attention and we're more educated. How come nobody else is? Because they're not as educated and they're not paying, they don't have the time to pay attention, etc. So it's like with this climate change thing, we're trying to obviously do something good, but only 10% of, that's like a 5 to 10% of South Africa, I think, can understand the problem that climate change represents. And it's the most educated usually, which means the whitest. And if we're the only people that can understand the problem, and we're telling people about climate change, and most of the people we're telling are Black, and they still have this trust issue, how are you going to get them to understand this really difficult problem, which is like, yeah, it's really hard to get your head around, and then also make them change their whole entire societal structure, like, or I don't know, like what we do tell them once we get them to pay attention to climate. What are we telling them? Telling them to tell their government to stop everything, or just lower the limits, or move to a better version? Like, what are we doing? It's we've got, if we stick on the climate change thing, we've only got a small percentage of the population that we can work with, and we've got to be, if we want to get 3.5% of them, then we have to be like 35 to 70% effective amongst the small group of people that we can mobilize. But I think that's the wrong way to do it. If we can talk about money and how people can get jobs and money and solve all the problems, I think you can get 100% of people involved. And yeah, you don't only have to be 33.5% effective in convincing them. You know, there's a larger group of people who are interested in this, and coalition partners will, I mean, who doesn't want money? Like all the things all different NGOs are looking for. Various different NGOs are looking for government to pay attention to, like sustainability and all the rest of it. And why not give them the ability to do that, and then measure the outcomes of their work, and just empower them by letting them have rooms in, or homes in, residential skyscrapers and all the rest of it. So you can have everybody fixing all the problems that need to be fixed, but we need to be getting everybody involved, like with a very powerful message that gets them doing things. And I think, I don't know, yeah, that's my more than 10 cents worth. So yeah, like any problems that you can see, guys, or what's preventing you from fully supporting me in our next national strategy meeting?
I think my final comment is going to be that it does seem like there's quite a lot of oversimplification, and
really,
that it's not really.
I was going really deep into a lot of topics here. Like,
well, things like you know, X is obvious, or Y is stupid, or such and such definitely requires education.
Let's not do the X.
And so on. There's quite a lot of sweeping statements.
Like, let's talk about.
And the second thing I would say is that that it also, I think you have some reading to do, and you need to look at other kind of models of alternatives to capitalism, and kind of ask yourself, you know, have I considered all these ideas, and where my eyes relate to these, and why? Otherwise, it does kind of feel like you're coming straight out of high school, and I don't know. It doesn't give the sense of something that's really thoroughly researched and considered.
So, like, could you give me an specific example of what you have a problem with when I say X is stupid or Y is evil, or?
I can't remember exactly what it was, but basically just saying that once people are educated, they can see the problems, and the solutions are quite obvious. I disagree with that completely.
Well, yeah, the example that we went into with you being in HR and knowing after being educated how to determine that something is right or wrong, wasn't that clearing up how clearly I understand that particular issue?
No, not necessarily. We don't know how to solve the problem. We don't have perfect solutions. There is disagreement in terms of the solutions, and we could be going in completely the wrong direction. But what we do know is that there's a problem. So it's kind of, you know, the thing of the more you learn, the less you know. You understand the problems better, but you tend to feel a lot less confident in your positions on the debate.
Well, I mean, as you were saying with the HR example that you gave, you know, people, as you could identify, would say whatever, you know, and you reckon that based on logic or based on certain reasons, you could say that your opinion was more valuable. Yes?
I could say it.
Right, and then you could prove it as well, right, based on logic.
No, it's not as simple as that.
Well, I mean, if somebody just makes a claim that's false or illogical, you can break it down based on that, can't you? Because I'm sure people make false and illogical claims all the time.
I'm sorry, I think I lost my connection. But yes, I was just saying there are lots of different types of information. There are my own biases and experiences. There's research, research that's produced information in various formats, sometimes attempts at objectivity, otherwise just qualitative studies and discussions. It's just a huge, massive information, and how one puts it together and where one stands in relation to other people is largely subjective. And even, I mean, if I want to try and show by logic, it'll never be deductive logic. It'll never be like X and Y, therefore Z. Never, never, never.
Okay, we'll try this on for size. So like the difference between objectivity and subjectivity, does the earth going around the sun depend on whether you believe it or not? Like, it doesn't matter what you believe. If what you believe goes against the objective facts, then you can determine what's right or wrong. I see you having issues of like that. You're saying that it is hard to know what the right thing to do is, and you're right. And the thing is, you will only know when you try out a few things, measure it, measure the outcomes, and then move forward or not. It's not saying I want the perfect solution right now, or else I'm not going to do anything, because that's not going to get anywhere. Like, rather, like if there is an issue that I can work on, then point that out to me specifically. If you just say go read another book about something, I don't actually know what I'm looking for, because I don't know what the missing piece of my puzzle is. It is a
well, it's debatable, Dave. It's not like you know, I don't it's for you to decide what pieces go where, and for other people to comment. I don't think we're working towards something that is perfect. I think different people can disagree on what is perfect for them because they have different priorities. And I think in some cases there may be no perfect, there may be no objective thing. The sun going around the earth is quite different to deciding, you know, how health outcomes in society should be weighted against income inequality, for example. Okay, different people are going to say, no, we should give more attention to the one than the other. And there's not necessarily, even if there is a right answer, we should be very tentative in concluding that we have it.
Well, what if we don't have this problem? What if we have enough nurses and enough people to provide perfect healthcare for everyone without even making that a consideration?
Resources are scarce.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is like the entire economy is basically geared towards making sure that we have enough to make people better. And in a better society, you're going to have less sick people because you're going to have more people paying attention to their eating habits as they do in developed countries. Because yeah, nobody wants to be fat, nobody wants to be slow. Everybody wants to be the best version of themselves. And if you tell them how that can be achieved and make it possible for them to do so, there should be less health problems. And yeah, so what the problems that you see right now might even evaporate once we actually just, I mean, like, think about if you were living under monarchy and you considered changing to democracy. Like, obviously there'd be so many issues that you couldn't see past right at that moment, but they're not actually issues. They were only issues in the previous system which didn't work and can be solved in the next. You know, so I mean, at the end of the day, like, what's, like, why wouldn't you, if, yes, I walked up to you on the street and said, hey, we could change the government, you would just say no because you don't know what it's going to look like, even though you know what we're doing right now is terrible? I mean, like, you can't see the betterness of it?
No, it's not that I'm just content with the current system or that I don't think we can change it. Yeah, I disagree with both of those things. I just think that we shouldn't be so quick to prescribe specific alternatives and should rather just take smaller steps toward a more democratic society with less hierarchy and domination of some people by others, whether that's based on what's called meritocracy or divine right or any other reason. Yeah, and I think also, I mean, people didn't have no idea of democracy under monarchies because democracy started in ancient Greece. So I'm loath to make historical simplifications as well.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, not sure, man. Like, if you, so you described this as being prescriptive, and I don't really see how it is that. It is optional, of course, but yeah, it is something. I mean, the alternative for you seems to be I don't know, which I don't know. Like, how is that a better alternative? Anyway, Cassie, please, on to you.
Oh, this doesn't really have anything to do with anything. I'm not rejecting that some of your ideas will work and that they are potentially part of the solution, but as Extinction Rebellion, we're not in the solution space at all. That's sort of where it comes in on the Citizens Assembly. So it doesn't mean we shouldn't be working on ideas already, especially since we could have a civilization collapsing before it gets hit by climate change. So, I mean, obviously we do start thinking about solutions, but I think as Extinction Rebellion, we shouldn't be pushing a specific solution to a specific problem. Obviously, we want renewable energy. There's certain things that are obvious, but other things are still very much up for debate. And what's right for one society or country or something is not necessarily right for another country. So I think it's good that we have these debates and get it clear in our heads, but I think we shouldn't be pushing it as XR as a part of a solution. That's just, doesn't mean it's not part of the solution.
So yeah, like, yeah, I don't know. It's so, yeah. So like, what is XR as well? It's another one of these things that we made up. I don't know. Like, I imagine that everybody in XR really wants to stop climate change. So the only thing that is stopping them right now, I imagine, is that there is no clear sort of way to do it. There is no solution that anybody can see except to stop. Would you agree to that, or you disagree?
No, I don't think that we don't have the solutions. I think we do have the solutions. We're just not getting them implemented. I think if you had to ask a whole bunch of scientists or the IPCC or anyone, that they know exactly how to stop it. It's just no one wants to. The governments don't want to, or the people who's really in charge don't want to. So the solutions are definitely there. That's what we're doing, is trying to get people to listen to the solutions without coming up with solutions, because we don't need to, because it's already there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The thing that the solution that we're coming up with, though, is like to tell people, yeah, like we know that the people are not going to tell their governments these things because the people are scared. They don't want to stop the economic system because they really see it as being producing of the quality of life that we've all become accustomed to. And so that's it. We're lowering, I think we're really lowering our percentage chance of changing somebody's mind because they're stuck in this way of thinking. So if you, rather than trying to solve a really complicated problem with a solution that is not likely to work, don't we want something better, something that more people are willing to get behind, and it does actually solve the problem, and not just that one problem, but incredible problems that we probably never even thought of, and yeah, it ushers in a better world than we'd ever imagined before, like a new change, like a really new normal. Isn't that something that people would want to be behind as an XR international movement? Isn't it like the perfect kind of thing to get going? Because there's no other global, well, Greenpeace is a thing, but they're really focusing on climate or on the environment. We are not, aren't we more flexible? Aren't we adaptable, but still just wanting to get the climate change done?
I think we are definitely more adaptable, but I mean, it's climate and ecological emergency, which is what we're tackling. And the economy is obviously probably the reason why we're in all these problems in the first place. But I don't think it's our place to tell people what they should want. Clearly, you would think everyone would want a better society and better this and that, but so I don't know, maybe some people are happy with how it is.
They don't have a better conception. This is what we all know. I think I tried to get it across here that there is a better way to live your life. There always has been, but every society got stuck in its way of living because all the people around me tell me the same thing. But globalization, it's making people aware of the limits of their nation or their culture or their sex even, or whatever. And you know, minds are opening up. I think the millennial generation is quite fundamentally different. I mean, think about how we, like when we go onto WhatsApp groups nowadays, there are all sorts of characters there, just typing posting whatever they want, not thinking about why they're doing it. And it's like, it's what happens when people get a new piece of technology. They don't know how to use it. They do it stupidly. But if you do this a while and you get tired of that kind of crap, you realize that there is a way to introduce your message. Like Andrew, the tips you gave out in that one group chat were a perfect example. You know, think about A, B, and C, and then boom, there's a better way for you to be in this forum. So millennials are like sort of figuring out, I think, because they live in this world, maybe they can catch on to these things better. And you know, they're the ones fixing the sexism right now, the Me Too movements and all the rest of it. Like, there is a different way of thinking. I think people are changing already, and they just want to know that, yeah, it's just the big superstructures, super society is too big a thing to digest for most people. But I think if we started a global dialogue, damn, really, why can't we change the way people think everywhere? Yeah, so that's
sounds like you want to start a cult, Dave.
Well, if it's a global cult that brings about objectively better outcomes that everybody wants to live in, then come on, what's wrong? Like, it's made up. Society is made up.
Can't decide for other people what's big.
No, I'm not. So this is the thing.
Yeah.
If
you think you can convince millennials better, then try.
It's like,
I don't know who you are by millennial. I thought I was a millennial, but anyway.
Well, I mean, yeah. So maybe that's why you came up with those tips. You know, there's a protocol. So yeah, it's just how we're trained, how we're brought up, man. So yeah, and as I said, like, yeah, society. So if you figure out what the right way to do something is in science, for example, you don't need to prove why that is the right way. Everybody else can try it themselves and see for themselves. So you don't need the guy at the top to be dictating everything. If he is the best guy, then all the smart people around him who understand the thing are going to say, oh, yeah, that's a really good idea. And it works because of all the reasons that we can show for, that we can explain. It's so you don't choose the guy. It's a meritocracy is not a dictatorship. It's fundamentally different. It is raised from the bottom up. Literally, the guy with the best ideas gets to make most of the decisions. Yes, Cassie.
Can I suggest a solution then? I'll start my own cult. We just put women in charge of everything.
Man, so that's anti-misogynistic. Come on, we can't be reverse sexist.
I agree completely.
What
Agree completely. Please give them a turn. Enough of the war. Enough of just trying to solve every problem with a hammer. Please take over.
Oh, yeah. So non-violence is not supposed to be a part of our societies. Like, I mean, violence is not supposed to be a part of our societies, and never. But yeah, we just happen to have listen to rules written in books that didn't make sense and we followed them because we didn't process everything logically. So the way to do that, avoid that, is getting people thinking logically and understanding their emotions and the nature of their reality and what they can change and how they should change it. Like remembering morality, for example. Yeah, maybe this is the message XR can get behind. Be moral, be globally moral, and then you won't have exploitation. You got to think more carefully. But yeah,
I don't know if there's anything more controversial than what morality is.
So it's like if you
in any case, it is 3 o'clock and I'm unconvinced. So unless there are in the future you make a bunch of revisions to the theory, I'm happy to think about
based
that.
on what though? This is the thing, Andrew. I don't know what you have a problem with. So
based on looking at alternatives and perhaps considering, I don't know, perhaps you could look into the scientific method a bit, because you seem to think it's quite simple, the idea of consensus.
So not about me, but about the plan itself. What about the plan itself has a problem?
The hierarchical nature, the idea of meritocracy, the kind of assumption that all sorts of things are objective or at least easily agreed upon. I think those would be the top ones.
So you don't believe that hierarchy exists or that it should exist?
I think it should be minimized.
Sorry?
I think it should be minimized.
So like what about in an organization where there are a lot of people with varying opinions about what should be done? Like how should decision-making work?
That's another thing you could read about, worker cooperatives and different ways of managing them. So that would be a form of worker democracy, democratizing the economy in some way. Anarcho-syndicalism is another example.
Yeah, as I said, like having people working and then having the best guy raised from the bottom up, isn't that anarcho-syndicalism? Isn't that meritocracy?
No, that's not. It's not about the best guy, because first of all, no one has the right to decide who is the best guy, and the best guy often, whoever looks like the best guy, often turns out not to be. So it's actually direct participation and deliberation and decisions made at the ground level. It's not deciding who to put in charge. It's putting ourselves in charge.
Right, but I mean, like, who gets to discuss it? It's going to be a council, right? It's not going to be everybody throwing their own opinion in and having equal weight in the decision that comes out at the end, right?
Well, a lot of people say one worker, one vote. I think you could certainly have a system where at least everyone who wants to gets the opportunity to give input. And yeah, there are models for worker cooperatives, and I encourage you to take a look at that. There's a weekly podcast by Richard D. Wolff, who's a Marxian economist. And he covers a lot of that, worker democracy. So yes, I'd recommend that you read up on that as well. There are lots of different ideas. People don't agree on just one obvious solution for everything. You definitely have to be in touch with what other people are thinking, rather than just kind of, you know, being mystified that no one else seems to agree with you.
You get that I'm not going to be in on all of these meetings in all these different structures that happen, right? But there is a process that's going to have to take place whereby the best information or the best ideas, it's going to have to go through a filtering process. And at the end, a decision is going to have to be made by, if not a person, a group, a small group of people, right?
I don't think that's necessarily the case.
So how did the decisions get made then?
Decisions would be made based on input from below, and then one mechanism you could put in place is to have the decision ratified by a referendum of all members in the organization. So perhaps these people who you're thinking of as at the top, where I might rephrase that as people who are more central to a certain issue, could propose solutions which would then be ratified by people in general. There are different ways of doing things. And again, it's arguable, it's all debatable, and you need to be au fait with what's, you know, what's already been proposed.
But so you recognize that there would have to be a small group at the top or at the center, as you put it, that would eventually be making the decision, right?
I wouldn't say at the top, because they don't have authority over anyone else. They don't have authority to make a decision. What they're doing really is trying to unify and integrate the different voices of the groups of members. And yeah, I agree. It's messy, but it's worse to just send one person to the top. That person, I mean, if nothing else, they become very easily corruptible. I mean, look at our friend Cyril and how he was willing to be tortured or killed for the freedom of our country. And today he's a fat cat, just singing along to the master's hymn sheet. We can't do that. We need to all have a sense of civic life and civic responsibility and involvement, and take the reins ourselves. Stop leaving it up to someone else.
Yeah, like the way to do that is to get everybody educated, right? To see that they can do this, and then figure out that the best way to do this is sometimes hierarchical structures and blah, 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 blah. Like, it's unfortunately, man, there's some basic things that you just can't get away from when you're dealing with your society. You can't have the perfect choices, but the only way you can do anything or try and is engineer your society so that it's more likely to make the best decisions. We know what's more likely to make the bad decisions. We've seen history many times, present many occasions. So just do the opposite, and think about it. Yeah, don't just. If I say do the opposite, maybe you think I'm fire and forget. But no, obviously, I mean continually go through the process of, is this better? Does bring about more positivity or negativity based on what? Same thing as we do all the time. So, like, yeah, I think I've said probably all I can say about that, the mission. Sorry to hear that you're not on board, Andrew. Anywho, thanks, Cassie, for coming along and hosting. Thank you for spending as much time as you have with me. It has been very, very enlightening and rewarding for me as well. Thanks. Cassie, cheers, Andrew. Cassie, was there anything else?
No, it's just like we're not so easily convinced. So I suppose it's good for you too, that you can see where there's gaps in your persuasive powers or your thinking, or the kind of people that you would have to convince, or maybe go about convincing certain types of people in a different way. So it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all thing. So I mean, don't give up just because you haven't convinced us. Just try harder, or change what you're proposing, or
So I would like to, but I can rarely get people's sense of like what the actual problem is, or if there is, because yeah, people often say I can find a problem because you haven't made it perfect. You haven't made it unabusable, but there is no such thing. But this is a huge step forward, and I've sort of come to realize that, like, yeah, when you try to take people out of monarchy, you just can't. Like, when you try to break them out of the matrix, most people will turn into an agent, because, you know, they can't see how a change could be better, but so they automatically just, you know, no, it's the new thing. We know the worst, what we have is worse, but we're going to stick with it anyway. It's kind of like a phenomenon. I don't know. I just wish, like, I could hear that there is a problem, like, that is, I don't know, genuine, not something that you can think of. But I can't come up with that. I can't find what the flaw is that really makes it something that shouldn't be done. Yeah, so I was hoping you guys could give me some things to work on.
I suppose that's the problem. That's the same with climate change. You've got to find that one thing that unlocks it in people's minds, and that they see it as a problem and they would like it to be changed. But I think you say that key is education. I'm not 100% convinced it's education, but you know, that's what we're looking for. We look at the same with climate change. We're looking for that key to unlock. And I think it may be human connection and talking to people and convincing them on a personal basis, rather than saying that they first need to be educated to see things the way that you see them. Because people don't have to see it the way you see them to understand something, I don't think.
No, so the point of, or the key is that anybody that sees a 5-minute video about how to structure their society and eliminate all the negatives, like, I think that should be a strong, like, I don't have to convince, and I really didn't think I'd have to convince anybody that it's possible to make up money and jobs, because these are things that are made up. And if you understand that, like, you get it like that, I don't know, like, what it is that's not being clicked in other people's minds. So, like,
well, then you need to work on that.
But what? Tell me, just tell me what in your mind is.
I don't know. It doesn't. I mean, it's not that I don't get it. I can understand there's these rules, and we can just change them just like that, because they're just rules. But you know, the world, I know it's stupid to say the world doesn't work like that, but unless you convince everyone, it's not going to change. You've got to show people this is a better way of doing things. It's like planting a different kind of rice and saying to people, this doesn't need this, doesn't need that. You show people that it works. This is so airy-fairy.
Right. No,
leave out the robot bit. You're scaring people with the robot bit.
It's because, but like that thing, I'm trying to show them how just a flick of a mental switch gets you to understand robots can be the best thing for humanity. They're supposed to be the best thing for humanity. It's just that we are totally fine with how the system works, even though it doesn't work for us. And we don't know this, but it's true whether you know it or not. And I think, like, you know this, right?
I don't think people don't know that the system's not working. I think most people are pretty aware that the system's not working, but they don't have a viable alternative, as you say. But you need to convince them you must do a better selling job with this.
But it was the education. Like, it's that they didn't know that they can, that the system doesn't work for them. But now that they know, they can hopefully understand it, and then they can also understand that there's a way to change it quickly. Like,
that's a very naive way of looking at things.
Sorry?
I think that's very naive to think that once people know that something is better or could be better, or that they just, you convince them of that specific thing, that people will change. It's not that people will suddenly want to change. It's because they know. It's not. Otherwise, they would all be queuing up for this.
But that's the only way to make people change. They won't change for something not better or just different. But if it's better, of course, everybody's supposed to change to be better. Like, I get that it's naive to expect people to do the right thing, but penalize them for not doing the right thing. If you don't get educated. If you have the opportunity and you don't want to get educated, then you don't have the right to vote. You do have to manipulate people to do the right things, don't you? That's what parents do.
The right things according to you.
Well, no, parents do it.
It makes you make the rules now.
No, everybody makes the rules. I'm saying everybody makes the rules in their own house.
But only if they're educated, otherwise they don't get to make the rules.
Well, they tend to
so
make...
that's your rule, number one.
No, but they tend to make indoctrination the name of the game in their home, because they don't know what knowledge is versus belief, for example. And then they teach a corrupted way of thinking to their kids, and by the class load, if you want, by the society load, and then nobody actually gets what they could be getting, because there's this corruption at the bottom, you know, or at the top, whichever way you want to look at it. But all you need to do to remove the corruption is that one tiny little thing, and then you'll see that everybody will come out better. It's like that. That's how the system all works, you know. You just need to know how it works, and then you can figure it out. Like, and that's the thing. If everybody has the ability to understand society the way I do right now, there would be no reason for them to do most of the things that they're doing. And all they need to do to get to know what I know is just go on YouTube, like literally, or like listen to some audiobooks and stuff. It's just, there's so much.
But that's the crux of the matter. It's like, if only everybody thought like you, then the world would be solvable. But that's what you say.
But why I think like this is not subjective. I'm not saying you should do this because I am doing this. I'm saying it's like when you find the right recipe for something, you tell people this is the right recipe. Yes, they can change it to their own particular flavors, but there's one that works for the largest amount of people, because when I create it, then this one scores the highest out of all the other dishes, for example. And that's how you see that this is more popular. But so popularity is one thing, but then also effectiveness is another thing, you know. So so it really just comes down to, if the thing that I'm saying is more effective, if looking at life this way helps you to realize the flexibility, or the flexibility of these things that control your life, then you wouldn't let them control your life. You would realize that there's something inside you, your brain, and that helps you actually avoid some mistakes that other people don't avoid, because they're listening to the poisoned well, or drinking from the poisoned well. So you have to know, you have to be able to test water, whether it's clear or not, and then present it to people. They might say, oh, I don't like this water, but it's because it's clean. They've never tasted the clean water. They've just tried this dirty stuff their whole life, and they're used to this. You know, like, how do you prove that the clean water is better? Well, there are tests. You can partake. It's not better because I say it's better. Like, you can check for yourself. That's how people are supposed to be. That's how meritocracy works in my mind, because really merit moves you up the rank. And so if there are enough intelligent people around you who are moral, and you're supposed to live in this kind of society, but that's another thing, then you tend to get better or more efficient societies anyway. But I don't know what it is. Like, why do people turn away the clean water? Like, because like right now I'm asking you guys, like, what is it that's not convincing you? And you can't say what it is, but I get that you're not convinced. And I don't know what else can be done. Anyway, thank you very much, guys, for this talk. All right.
Thanks, Dave. We heard you out, man. We heard you out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew.
Cheers. Anyway, so I'll see if I get any more at the evening time on Wednesday, and maybe report back to you guys if I got anybody else on board later. All right.
Okay, cool.
Ciao for now. Bye.
Cheers, guys.